The Secretary mentioned the Board of Elections, which runs the nuts and bolts of our elections, and they are certainly part of the Department of Technology, who's also joining us tonight. Thank you for coming before the House Committee on Innovation, Internet, and Technology. And we have Vijay Kumar, who is the Chief Digital Officer, and Brian Tardov, as I mentioned earlier, the Chief Security Officer. So, gentlemen, welcome to the committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rogerio, esteemed members of the committee, and anybody else who is attending today. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Vijay Kumar. I've been with the state for over 3.5 years now. I was primarily in the private sector before I came here, and it's been an honor to serve as the head of IT. So I am the head of Enterprise Technology Systems and Services, which includes library services, the Office of Library Services, as well as the Department of Information Technology. And Brian Tardov is our Chief Information Security Officer. So as soon as I started, we did an engagement at that point where we evaluated the resilience of our applications and infrastructure and our network. So we had a third-party assessment. And based on that findings, we knew that we had work to do to catch up, so that we were definitely ahead of the curve, and we were actually being very sincere about the efforts to advance cybersecurity with the ever-changing threat landscape. So we wanted to create a culture of awareness, but also we wanted to focus on people, process, and technology. And Brian will actually get into further details, but just to give a brief summary. In terms of people, today Rhode Island is among the best cybersecurity teams, led by Brian Tardov, who used to be with the National Guard. We have excellent processes, and we actually work very well with the MSI-SAC, with the National Guard, with the state police, the other states, to share information, to collect information, as well as be proactive about things. From a technology perspective, we have made significant investments to advance technology in the state, especially for cybersecurity. We have around 15 executive agencies and another 15 quasi-agencies, and all of these agencies collaborate very well to advance cybersecurity in the state. With that, I'll turn it over to Brian for further details. Thank you.
Thank you, BJ.
Madam Chairwoman, for inviting us to join this evening. To follow up on BJ's remarks, I would just comment that...
Brian, I'm not sure if your microphone is on.
We can hear you, but barely.
We cannot hear you here in the committee room.
Brian, sorry to interrupt you, but it's the same thing. We didn't have the problem earlier on when we talked, so whatever you did at that time is probably what you want to do now.
That sounds like cybersecurity code.
Madam Chair, while they're fixing this,
Yes,
could
I
I
would.
be recorded as being present, and if you have voted to hold the bills for further study?
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy, as present, and we did hold the bills for further study. If you could please be recorded in the affirmative. Thank you. Brian, do you have your microphone? No. The Department of Technology does not have audio. But we will invite you back. Don't worry.
So what I can do is I can talk for Brian, and I'm sure he can do a better job because security is primary responsibility. As I mentioned, we've invested in people, process, and technology. In addition to that, we do conduct cybersecurity awareness training. And at this point, we have been training state employees and vendors and they have to be compliant on the actual training. So there is phishing training, there is advanced training, and the percentage of compliance is significantly high. We want to make this 100% compliant as well. 3 years ago, a few months after I started, we had a malware incident in the state. And the resilience of the state at that time prevented us from having any damage due to that attack. We have good disaster recovery, as well as we have processes in place to proactively catch any threats and address them proactively. So again, this was 3 years back, and the investments we have made in people, process, and technology have helped us to come a long way. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you would have.
Does any questions from members of the committee? And I have to say, when I spoke with both Bijay and Brian offline a while ago, Brian has some tremendous experience as a cybersecurity expert. So we will invite you back, Brian, because I think you would have lent some good conversations. Specifically, I wanted to know more about what we were doing with our school districts and RIDE that we had talked about in terms of training people to ensure that they know what to do in the event of email phishing and cybersecurity attacks. So. Are there any other questions from any? Yes, Second Vice Chair Carson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a question. I've met with these gentlemen before in years past, and was always fairly impressed with the work that they were doing. And I would ask that at a future meeting, I'm still kind of interested in the same thing that I asked about a couple of years ago, and that is, at a future meeting, perhaps, Chairwoman, they could report to us on the status of our software that's used by the different departments across our governmental system. I remember that they provided to me a report about 3 years ago that listed all the different pieces of software that were used by every department, and it was fairly expansive. And I think that what I think we should be concerned about, or what we might be concerned about as a legislature, is what are the replacement needs for these software over the years. I mean, we saw what happened when UHIP was instituted, and that created a lot of issues for us, some that were unexpected. And so I think that the legislature needs to have some kind of forecast of what our technology needs are across the different departments. So at a future meeting, I'd like to hear them to report on that, please.
Terrific. That's a terrific future meeting that we certainly can schedule. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Whip Chippendale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to piggyback off my friend from Newport's colleagues' comments. Certainly, we've all experienced issues with DLT. Obviously there was the fraud, but I think the entire weight of this pandemic really exposed that perhaps there are some flaws in their legacy system. So perhaps that we could do some sort of a overall review, because they're buried and they can't keep up. It's tough for them to do what they're doing right now. So I think if we're able to help in that respect, those departments should also be able to weigh in as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Any other comments? Anybody? Okay. BJ, thank you, and Brian, so very much for your time tonight. We greatly